let's go through. Ready? Ladies, head in the game. You should have the answers to last night's workout. All right, leave me with me here. We'll go through the answers one by one. I might have made a mistake, but I'm not sure because Carissa caught me in my daily dumb mistake, so I might not have a daily dumb mistake to show you. So, it's a very weird feeling. All right, take a look at your answers, see how you did. This, in all honesty, after all the time we spent factoring, you should be very comfortable with these.
I'm not entirely clear on 5.
Number 5, the answer is the answer that's in the answer space. Okay?
Plus 3y.
X plus 3y, x minus 3y, x squared plus 9y squared. That kind of got cut off a little bit there. Now, if I were to ask you, let's backtrack for just a minute. Hold it. Shh, 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 shh. What if I asked you to factor this? And this? Shh. Oh. And this. Very quickly on your own paper, try to factor those 3. First one, second one should be easy, third one should be almost easy.
Finish.
Nice. Give everybody else about 30 more seconds. So, there's certain things, I started talking about it with graphs the other day, that is a great way to do it is the way they're teaching reading now to the younger kids in the district, where there are certain words that are sight words. Certain things you just recognize, the word the word we, the word saw, was, etc. You need to sight recognize that this is the difference in 2 perfect squares. You need to be looking for that, okay? When you do, what you realize is that you can take the square root of both of those. And because it's a difference, that's what you should get. Now, the reason it works is because technically, in the middle of this, there is a plus 0x. And because these numbers match, and they're opposite signs, when I double distribute, I'm going to get a plus 5x and a minus 5x, which adds up to 0 x's. That's why this is the only binomial with a squared quadratic that we can fit into this factoring pattern of the difference of 2 perfect squares. So that really does need to be sight recognized. You need to be looking for it, recognize it, and hit it. Any questions? Now, my experience is that every person in the room would get x squared minus 25 right. I would certainly hope so. The next one, I think everybody would get right. And if you remember, I said to you that the first 2 are very easy.
X squared. What equal x?
Oh, I'm sorry. The first 2 are very easy. And then the third one I said was a little bit more challenging. What would the third one be? Everybody?
X minus 9y, x plus 9y.
That's right. X minus 9y and x plus 9y. The only difference being here that there's a squared in the first and the last. term, yes.
So when you wrote the answer for number 5, was that last part also part of the answer, or was it just like?
Let me get to
before?
that now. I think the question for number 5 was x to the 4th minus 81 y to the 4th?
Yes.
Okay. So immediately, because you only see 2 terms, and because you see a subtraction sign in the middle, you're saying to yourself, hey, can I square root both of those?
No.
Oh, yes, you can. Are they both square rootable?
No.
And if they, yes, they are.
It's negative 81, you can't get a square root of negative.
You take the square root.
The minus sign is what tells you to look for the difference. You're just square rooting 81.
What?
And now,
Oh my god.
just Mr. Lindquist,
What?
you just called me God.
Oh.
Only Mr. Lindquist.
No,
That's pretty bigly. It's huge. Wrong. Now, if you do the difference of 2 perfect squares now, this is what you get. X squared minus 9y squared, and x squared plus 9y squared. Now, we only have what we call this, and very carefully now, and make sure you're looking, the difference of 2 perfect squares. I have never said the sum of 2 perfect squares. You can't factor the sum of 2 perfect squares. So this is done. But look at this. This is also a difference of 2 perfect squares. I can do it again. X plus 3y, x minus 3y. Okay?
Why couldn't you do that for the second one?
Because it's a sum. See,
that's how you do
this is gonna add up to the 0 in the middle because the signs are opposite. But if you tried to factor this into plus plus or minus minus, could you ever get them to add up to 0? No. There would always be either a positive or a negative number. That's why, that's a great question. That's why it only works with the difference of 2 perfect squares. The answer is right, this times that. All 3 parts have to be in that answer. Now, for the most part, you don't usually see this on the part 1. You usually see it on the part 2. And if you did just the first step factoring, which is right here, you would get 1 out of 2. Because it is somewhat right. But to get it fully right, you have to go all the way to the bottom.
Will we still get 1 out of 2 on like this?
Nope, because it's part 1. Okay, so that, I think, fully explains the difference in 2 perfect squares and lets you know where that's coming from. Key word on that in the directions is to factor what?
Completely.
Completely. What does completely always mean?
2 steps.
2 steps. Always, always, always 2 steps. So, let's shrink this down. Some more. One big, very, very, very important thing, notice the difference in the directions for numbers 6 and also 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. The directions were to factor, so the answers look like factors. What did the directions switch over to on number 7? Solve. So I have to go past factoring. I don't solve when it says to factor, and factoring is a step in solving. Yes?
So for number 7, but it also goes for 8, if you put like n equals 7 and n equals -2, well that's still good.
You're all good. Yes?
For number 8, why wouldn't you switch the sign to the like 3 or 7?
I did. It was plus, right? Then I subtracted 3 and divided by 7. Okay? Any other questions? Mr. Pappas, you have a look of bewilderment.
Why is there a 7 in front of the x? Why is
Here?
there- Yeah.
Because I'm looking for a common factor, I pull out the x. When I pull out the x, the 7 is left.
How for the other equation is just 7x plus 3?
Well, I pull out the x, the 3 is left, and then maybe it's the guy on the left, maybe it's the guy on the right. And now I go to how to solve linearly.
Okay.
Okay? All right, let's go to the next page. Janelle?
I'm confused on how is it, in the radical, how is it 14 for the answer? I put, my answer was x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 7.
Oh, the 2 cannot divide into the radical. If I'm gonna divide into the radical, I have to divide another radical into the radical. So if this was square root of 2 into the square root of 14, that would give you square root of 7.
I did,
But because it's a whole number, it's going to divide into the whole number part. Now, let me show you this one. Ready? This, I think, will help it make sense to you. Let's try this. If I gave you 4x over 4, what would you do?
I would divide the 4.
Kill the 4's, right?
Yeah.
Good. I don't also put the 4 into the x, do I? Likewise, this becomes a 2. So the 2 goes into the 2, but I don't also put it into the 14. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's just one thing, do you divide by 2, do you divide the 56 by 2 before you do that? Cause I try to like simplify, I would have trouble simplifying the radicals, so I just did, like, once I got to step on the top of that, yeah, that one, I did 6, plus or minus, and then I put the square root of 7, and then the square root of 8, and then.
Yeah, but you couldn't do that
simplify
because 8's not a perfect square and 7's not a perfect square. You have to choose the perfect square that goes into 56.
Oh, you mean.
Otherwise, you can't square root it.
You mean the result of the, okay.
Yeah, remember when we said you gotta write 1, 4, 9?
Yeah.
You have to pick the biggest one of that list that goes into 56. And 8 and 7, while they do divide into 56, you can't find the square root of either, so it doesn't do you any good.
So would it be correct if I did 40, the square root of 49 or like, I don't understand.
No, it has to be a perfect square that goes into that. The only perfect square that goes into 56 is 4. Because I can find the square root of 4, it's 2. If you pick any number, other number that goes into 56, it doesn't do you any good because you can't find the square root of it. Only 4 will work. If you remember, I said to every person in the room, I strongly suggest to every one of you when you get your test, before you even attempt to do a question, that you write this list out. Or you could do the AJ technique and just put y equals x squared in the calculator and look in the y column. And that is your list of perfect squares. And you look, whenever you simplify a radical, to see which one of those divides into the radical, and that's the number you use. And it has to go in evenly. If it doesn't, no good. Yes?
Was it confused how you're supposed to simplify the radical in the quadratic formula? Like,
Find? Is that what you
How
said?
you're supposed to simplify it because I don't know.
Well, that's what we just said. You have to find the biggest perfect square that goes into 56.
But then I don't know what, like, you just crossed out the numbers and I'm confused.
Okay, let me erase it. I said to myself, what's the biggest perfect square that divides into 56? I look on my list, 4. So I make it square root of 4, square root of 14.
Okay.
That's what I have here and there. And then I just do the square root of 4. What is the square root of 4? 2. So I get rid of the square root of 4 right there, and I replace it with a 2. And then the last thing I do is divide 2 into both of those. Yes?
Would it be correct if you put x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 1 and then square root of 14? No.
Technically, it's equivalent, but that's like saying reduce 4/8 and I'm gonna tell you it's 2/4. Well, that's true, but it's a half.
Yeah.
And you need to recognize square root of 1 is 1.
Okay.
All right. All right. Let's scroll her up a little bit. Now, each of these things that we're going over right now, I'm very happy that we're going over because we're taking care of business ahead of time. But I unbelievably think it's important that you go home tonight and you prepare thoroughly for this test. And part of preparing thoroughly is to use this video and the slider at the bottom of the screen that you'll get to slide back and forth until you have covered each of the questions that gave you a hard time. And then you copy them down and you redo them and make sure you can get them right. That's a really good place to start. Any questions here?
We don't have to do number 15,
15? Oh, I did this here because I noticed, on the test you take tomorrow, I think what I do is I just write simplify. I don't do any of the subtracting, and you have to do the simplification. So I just showed you the work here. Again, what's the biggest perfect square that divides into 8? 4. So it's square root of 4, square root of 2, square root of 4 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6, radical 2. So you will not, in any way, shape, or form on the test be asked to add or subtract radicals. It will not happen. But simplify, fair game. Any questions? Okay, let's go to scan 7 now. And let's change the size to 50%. And there we go.
This one is easy.
I agree.
Oh, I did the same thing.
Make sure you show your table. Anytime we do a graph, we want to show the table. Okay? The two that might have given you some difficulty are range and domain. The variable that represents range is y. All I need to do, please everybody look up here so you don't miss this. It says, what's the range? I look at the graph. I look at the y value that the graph covers. If you notice, this is where the turning point of the vertex of the graph is. From here up, for the y-axis, the graph is covered. And that means that it's y greater than or equal to 0, because that's the part of the graph covered. If for some reason the graph went down here, I would do y greater than or equal to -4. Okay? And then as far as where the x is increasing, the x increases from here up. Now it's not actually increasing at 4. It's turning at 4. So x is greater than 4 is the domain. Remember, x is domain, y is range. Okay, any questions? Questions?
Oh,
Yes?
We have extra help tomorrow.
No. Last one, scan 8. The good news is, everything that we're going to talk about is on the video, and we're also going to put the answers up to the work that you're doing now before we leave class today. So you'll have both sets, okay? All right, let's go to this one. There's my graph. I did not put the table up, but you should put the table up. See, this says 50%. It looks a lot bigger than 50%. Yeah, see? That makes sense. There we go. This was the Linquist Daily Dumb Mistake that Carissa caught me on, so I was able to get rid of it. Remember, you may have been about to make the same dumb mistake. B is 0 because there's no x term. The a is in front of the x squared, the b is in front of the x, and the c is the constant by itself at the end. B is 0 because there was no number in front of the x. I just screwed up. I just did my daily dumb mistake. So then I adjusted it, and there's the answer. If you wrote plus or minus radical 6, it's probably even a touch better. Okay? Any questions? Yes?
I put 0 plus or minus radical 6 over 1.
That's fine, but again, you don't need over 1. I mean, what does over 1 do? Okay? All right. And scan 9, the graph of this guy. Now, I want to explain to you how you can put, oh, you know what? I didn't do number 20. I
Oh, I wrote
apologize.
those numbers down, but like it's.
All right. I want to talk to you about how to do the cube root in the calculator. There are 2 ways to do cube root. We mentioned it earlier in the year, but I want to remind you. The first way is that through the math system, there is a cube root. So you can go to math and look down, it'll say cube root. But it's important that you understand that another way to do it is this. Because this will work for any root, even the 20th root, wouldn't matter. The square root of x, because square root's really the second root, is x to the 1/2. The cube root of x, girls, is x to the 1/3. The fourth root of x is x to the 1/4. The fifth root of x is x to the what?
X to the 1.
Hey, is our head in the game here? The fifth root of x is 1 to the 5th. What do you think the 10th root of x would be? X to the what?
10.
1/10. In other words, whatever the root is, you just make a fraction of it. And you do, girls, enough. You make a fraction of it and you do 1 over whatever it is. If it's the fifth root, it's 1 over 5. Fourth root, 1 over 4. Cube root, 1 over 3. So you do that, and whatchamacallit, for cube root, it's 1/3. So now everybody go to your calculator and type in y equals. And then type in x, and then use the caret symbol, that up arrow, and then you have to do parentheses with fractions, parenthesis 1 divided by 3 parentheses. That's how we'll put in 1/3. And then go to table. And when you do that, you get the table that I generated, and now you get the points to put on the graph. Okay? All right, and this is a little bit of a sight recognition thing. Remember, we talked about what the cube root graph looks like, and we said that it's a sideways squiggle like this. Okay? All right. And I don't think I did number 20. It says to solve by factoring. If you ever cannot solve by factoring, then you solve by quadratic formula. And what I'm going to do now is scroll up and do it with you very quickly. Get it all on one side. Oh, God. Get it all on one side, minus 8 minus 8. Then I get 4n squared plus 6n minus 8 equals 0. I'm now going to factor out the 2. And that would give me 2n squared plus 3n minus 4 equals 0. And then this is a plan B guy. And if I multiply by the 2 here, I realize right away I can't factor it. So I'm going to divide out the 2. I get 2n squared plus 3n minus 4 equals 0. Now, I do believe on tomorrow's test you will be able to factor. But if it says to factor and you can't, you always turn to the quadratic formula. So it's going to be x equals, I'm not going to fill in the whole formula here. It's the negative of b, which is negative 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared is 9, minus 4 times 2 times negative 4. And that's over 2 times a, which is 2, which is 4. So I'm going to get x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 4 times 2 is 32. 9 plus 32 is 41 over 4, and that's as far as you can go. There is no simplifying the square root of 41. Okay. Any questions? All right, so that's everything that was on yesterday's pretest. For the remainder of the period, you really have 2 ways you can go, and you're going to do whatever you want to do. You can talk to each other about things you got wrong from yesterday, and further explain them to each other, further go over them, and then you can take out today's pretest, match up the question with the one that gave you difficulty yesterday, and work on that particular question. I think that's a really good way to do things. Or you can turn around and just work on today's pretest and do that. You can do it together, you can do it alone, however you want to do it, okay? I will have this up on the video pretty soon.